So welcome to the Take a Breather podcast with Stacy Every and Eric Almeida. We are certified emotional freedom technique practitioners, and on this podcast, we discuss how EFT can help improve your mental and physical health by bringing real healing to the body and to the mind. We also have different types of practitioners visit us on the show to tell us about their methods and how they can help facilitate deep healing. As always, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and like and subscribe to us on YouTube. That helps the podcast out a ton. And today we would like to introduce Kyle Spyrides. He is the owner of Soul Gazing Photography in Perth, Australia, and author of the upcoming book, Decide Your Destiny. And he also owns this channel of the same name, Decide Your Destiny. So welcome, Kyle, to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric and Stacy. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So Stacy, take it away with the first question.
Yeah, let's just start with the basics and tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what it is you do.
Yeah, for sure. So my day-to-day job is photography. So, business branding photography, capturing the soul and essence of the business owner and their core message and, what they're trying to connect to, and really representing that online so that it can actually emotionally shift someone on the other end of that 2D screen and, actually feel some sort of connection to the person who's providing that service and start to trust that person. So that's obviously, I got into it with portrait photography, but you've got to make regular income some way. So yeah, that's where I went into business photography and commercial photography and product photography. So yeah.
I find it so interesting, that idea of capturing someone's soul or their essence on a photograph. And I'd love to know more about, I guess, your perspective on how you do that and what, like how you do it and what you're looking for, and maybe some of the tricks of the trade, even of how you offer that kind of a service to your clients.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it started when I was completing my diploma of photo imaging, and I was going through my studies, and at the end we have a exhibition. So I had to think of what I was going to do, which, any sort of applied pressure is good because sometimes it can get you to really start thinking in a creative sense. So I really enjoyed taking portraits, and I started taking photographs of my family around my grandparents' house. So I started off with my grandparents because I live with my grandparents. So they pretty much raised me. So I was taking photographs of my grandparents, and that they would get a bit upset, like, oh God, Kyle, another photograph. Oh, so they were the most photographed grandparents in all of Cronulla at the time. So yeah, so they, I was taking photographs of them in the house, different sort of locations, and then also different family members. So I love taking photographs of elderly people and younger people. So my younger cousins, because I felt like they were more, how should I say, more vulnerable to show their soul. They're more open to show their soul. And then, when I was taking photographs of my teenage cousins, they had this veil over over their whole expression, over, like their identity, who they were. And I think, they were struggling with their identity at that age, which I totally understand. I went through that whole phase as well. So it would take maybe 2 hours to capture their soul and essence. And the process would be, I would just sit in a comfortable location. A few measures were consistent through all the images. So it was all in and around the house, in my grandparents' house. It was all natural lighting. And yeah, it was all portrait or landscape style, but very close portraits. So I would just talk to them. I'd talk to them, ask them questions. And I'd find, as I would have a conversation with them, there'd be this split second where they would show their soul. They would go deep within themselves. And you'd like take this photograph. So the photograph actually here, which I don't know how you can see, but that's my grandfather, with his beret, and he's looking out over the bay. And he, just for a split second, I went into that kind of moment. And he's an architect, so he is an observer. He looks at things, and when he's at a party, he'll be sitting back and looking at the party and different sort of things, and family gatherings. But when he passed away in 2019, my whole family were asking, "Where's that photo? Where's that photo?" And I was over in Sydney looking after him, in the 2 weeks up until he passed away, because we brought him back into his house, because he was never sick his whole life. So we brought him back into his house, and he passed away that way. But that photo, they all felt like that's him. You caught his essence, you caught who he is. And when we look at that image, it feels like he's here with us. So that's what I'd say in terms of capturing it. And I mean, tips and tricks is really, it's all about them and it's not about you. It's really one of those cases where it's about the subject. It's about them feeling comfortable, them diving deep into their story, because the more, you ask the first few questions, they know the camera's there, they know what you're doing. Then you ask a couple more questions, and then they totally forget the camera's there. And I spend a lot of my time actually with the camera removed from my face, communicating to the soul, because I want to draw that out.
Nice. Well, it's such a lovely way to think of photography. So I did a little photography myself in my 20s, and my dad was a wedding photographer, which certainly, yeah, he did it for like about 20 years actually. And we had a dark room.
Good commitment.
Yeah. He was a teacher, so in the summer he would shoot weddings. And we had a dark room in the house and everything back in the old days with print photography, So I mean, and I know the wedding is such a lovely time. There's the stress of wedding photography, but people are so lit up with the joy of it all that you see those kinds of photos that you're talking about in wedding photography all the time. I mean, there's often initially there's the stilted ones because everyone's the bride might be stressed out, or the groom, people are worrying initially, but then once they relax. And I know one reason my father loved wedding photography is he's such a sociable person. And so it was about connecting to these people and being in that crowd of family, and then getting to take photographs too, and capturing just what you say about the people at their best and at their happiest and at their most authentic selves. And it's such a nice, I think of more typical commercial photography with headshots and business owners' photographs. And I'm not sure I've ever heard a photographer who took the kind of time that you do to really show the person as a human and not simply someone trying to sell us stuff, or have that, or even like the persona, right? Like so often we have as a business owner, or as be it a bigger company or smaller company, is often a persona we have versus us being at the front of the if I'm making sense. That I think people often put on the face of the business owner. And I'm curious, you mentioned that teenagers often have the facade, but I could see where ages all the way from teenager till elderly are going to have a facade you have to get around before they really show themselves.
Yeah, definitely correct. And I think I was like with my grandparents, because they were very much who they were. You know what I mean? There was no beating around it. This is who they were. And to me, they were angels. They were lovely, generous people. They had over 150 people stay in their home at one point, through each person's life. So they had people from the country, Aboriginal people come and stay for a couple of weeks. They had Chinese exchange students. They had Americans. They had all these different sort of people that weren't family. And then they had long distance cousins, and then their kids stay at different points. One time when the bank was foreclosing one of the houses, and all these sorts of different times that they just had people over. And so for me, I guess I was very lucky to have that connection with them. But you're right, that there is that that premise people put up. And even if you've connected with them, you had a great one-to-one conversation with them, and then you set up for the shoot and you got everything planned out, at the start of the shoot, they will always have that sort of wall up, because it is a bit strange to have this, metal machine in your face, or even just this focus on them, So even if you use your phone to take some photos, it's still like this focus on their face, and it's quite unsettling at the start, So it's all about disarming them and just making them feel comfortable. And I think through conversation, like you said about your father, the connection is so important. That's what really draws it out. draws a bit more out of them and a bit more out of them. And then once they forget there's a camera there, that's when the beauty starts.
It's a whole interesting like psychological issue, like the camera in the face. There's like I just think of all these different threads. I mean, I'm thinking partially too of simply the walls most people tend to put up in general for protection, and and how sad it is that so we're most easily our authentic selves up till age about 12. And then again, when we're like 70, and everything in between, like once I know a lot of older people, like once they settle in, like I'm so old, I don't care. And then, I don't care anymore. I hear elderly people say that, like I'm too old to care. Here's me and take it or leave it. And that's how it is. And there's this whole giant lifetime in between where we're not doing that. And I assume that some of what you're deciding your destiny work is around that being. I can see what a beautiful segue it is into the photography that you do, into the Decide Your Destiny work that you do, your channel and upcoming book about finding the authentic self and getting to do that all the time, and not just for early life and late life, but everything in between.
Yeah. Well, it was actually my grandfather sitting in his living room on his couch, and he turned to me, and the sun was kissing the side of his face, and he had this boyish grin, like this, this like bubbly, like joy in his face, and he just, and we weren't talking about anything. We were just sitting there. It was just a period of time. We were just sitting there in the lounge room, probably just enjoying the sun coming in. And he said to me, "Decide your destiny." And I was 18 at the time, and I went, what? Like, obviously, like not understanding. He goes, "Decide your destiny." I said, What do you mean, Clive? Like, what are you saying? He said, "Make sure that in your life, whatever you do, that you are deciding your destiny." And I just like for me, it's one of those things at the time goes in one ear, out the other. But recently, through, like health challenges and different sort of things and where I live now and the decisions I made, I realized that it actually set in to my action taking in my life. And that, I actually did decide my destiny in a lot of ways. And I did decide to do this over that. And I didn't just go here just because of the money or just because of the convenience or just because, I was told to go here. I think, and that's the whole purpose of the Decide Your Destiny movement that I'm creating and feeding every day is to invite people and create a platform where people can become the authority over their own life. That's really what it's about.
Well, what a great word. I mean, my own son just graduated high school yesterday.
So congratulations.
Thank you. So he's 18, and there's all the, there's the speeches that happen and the advice and the, be successful and, pursue your goals but decide your destiny has a whole different energy to it than most of the other words you tend to hear at this time of your life. I mean, destiny is such a weighty term, but it's like, it's this interesting combination of like responsibility and opportunity and excitement all wrapped into one.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the opportunity to see, when you work backwards in life, when you work backwards and you kind of go, all right, what do I want my lifestyle to be? And then you work your job, your career, different sort of things around that lifestyle. It can be a lot easier. But I think what we do is we work, step 1, step 2, step 3. And I mean, that's our schools. That's everything's kind of step 1, step 2, step 3. But I think what happens along the way is going in that sort of order. You get upset. You find things that aren't aligned with you. You're doing things that you don't want to be doing. And then that kind of messes with your moral compass. And then so you lose your way, and one thing leads to the next thing. And I think at that stage of my life, I didn't know who I was deeply, which I don't think many people at that age do. And also absolutely. I was in I was at a crossroads, and I had quite a challenging upbringing, and so I wasn't dealing with all the emotional turmoil within me at the time. And I could have gone down a pretty bad path, that I had options to go down, or I had kids that I would hang around who would, do naughty things and like get up to no good. And years later, I found out about what they did end up getting up to. So it was at that crossroads. And I think for me, hearing that and having the foundation of my grandparents, I was super, super lucky to have that in my life. And destiny, when you think about it, it's like, I love chatting to different people, like I was chatting to the spiritual guru guy recently, and he was talking about destiny, and is it decided for you? Like, and then another guy was kind of saying something else, like against my thing of decide your destiny. And so I recorded him and I put it up on YouTube and said, decide to not decide, ? Because I think that's the whole point of it. It's like asking questions. Like, I'm not afraid to have what I'm trying to do question. I'm not afraid to have it picked apart, because each person's going to find some different things in it. And if I just stick with, no, this is the rules of deciding your destiny, and you've got to buy into my programming, and if you don't, then you're not getting it, then it's not going to work, because I think it means something different to each person. And that's what's nice, once they hear the word destiny. And I look at it as, I was 18, I had a whole life to map out. He was in his late 80s, and he was giving me an option to kind of work backwards,
For sure. It's go ahead, Stacy.
No, I just really, it feels like you're bringing the idea of destiny, and so decision and destiny is bringing a certain amount of balance. I know what you're talking about as far as I think there's the back and forth, right? There's the balance between forcing things to happen a certain way because your mind wants them to do so. And then there's the allowing, and then knowing when to surrender. And then also having, like, learning as much as you can about who you are and what you want. And it really is this constant ebb and flow between what we want and what we would like to decide our lives to be, and what we'd like to see in our future. And also knowing we're part of a larger system that's mysterious, and we don't always know what's around the corner, or we don't always know who we're going to meet, or what the possibilities might be. So finding that ebb and flow between, and I think right now there's a lot of people I know in this country that feel kind of helpless about their ability to make decisions that are going to actually make their lives the way they want them to be it because of the pandemic or because of their families or economics. There's so many factors where they feel like they don't have the ability to decide or create their own destiny. So I love that your channel brings in like the reminder of that piece of the puzzle, that piece of the ebb and flow of yes, there's a certain amount of surrender and a certain amount of allowing that has to happen, but we also are self-actualized beings that get to decide what we want and pursue it as best we can, while knowing that, while also being flexible and open to the world too.
Yeah, and I think that's so right. It's that balance. I'm reading a book recently. I finished the book actually, Untethered Soul, and it has one part of it where it asks you questions, and it's like, it goes, who are you? And then like the book responds kind of like, because I was listening to an Audible as well, and it goes through these questions, and you're like, oh, I am John from accounting. And it's like, no, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'm a father. He's like, no, like, who are you? And it keeps going deeper and deeper. And
love that.
Yeah, and it's really like, it's one of those books that kind of makes you kind of think as you're going through and have shifts in yourself, like, which is, sometimes you read books or listen to books and you get like this kind of motivation, or you get this inspiration for a new idea. But this kind of just was, how should I say, disconnecting you from your way of knowing what is and how things are, and going, hey, maybe you've been looking at it wrong. Like, let's get rid of all the gunk, or all the programming that you've had, or the self-programming you've done, saying I am a Greek man, or whatever it is, and then come back to the basics and try and build yourself back up from that and find out who you are deep within. And so I think that's definitely part of it. And you talk about when to decide, when to action it, and when to kind of just let it surrender. And I think that book does a great job of trying to combine the two, and I think one thing that people really struggle with, and maybe it was more me because of who I am deep down, but that kind of feeling that you don't have any horses in the game. You don't have any things to play with. You're kind of totally subject to the way that your life is heading, and you're just kind of going along. And I think that is quite a daunting thing, the sort of, and no offense to anybody that does work in a cubicle, but the sort of cubicle 9-to-5 life is the only way or direction I can go, because of this, and this, and because of all these things that happened in my past, and because I was told this by this teacher. Like my grandfather was told, I think, like really early in his teens, that he was an idiot by his teacher, and he was never going to amount to anything. So no surprise, he ended up dropping out, and it took him a longer period of time to get go through architecture and everything. But then he became a professor. He had his own business, all these sorts of different things, and he built his own house. And again, everyone was saying, "Why are you building your house down in Cronulla? There's no sewage line there. There's no, there's no houses there. It's basically just like a bit of dirt." And he said, "No, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing." Kept going, and he had built this beautiful house over this bay, and I think built it for what would have been like $80,000 or $60,000 back in the day, and then because of where it is, it gets up to 2 million, but never sells it, because it's like he's like, this is my what I've created, my space for my family, and this is why I'm going to keep having it. And his wife is now enjoying the lounge room, how the light hits the lounge room, is enjoying the house, and remembers him by the house that he created. So I think that's the thing, like you can feel so caged in, or like a kind of science experiment in a lot of your life, or just and you're like, wait a minute, when's it my turn to start moving puzzle pieces or chess pieces? So yeah, I think that's the challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so interesting how children come into the world and they just have that infinite amount of potential, and then, at least here in the States, I'm not sure how it applies in Australia, but like there is this, they're put into a set of like a regimented setup with conventional school for so long, and it's like they forget that they still have that infinite potential. And so it's just it's unfortunate that like you still need the fundamentals that you're supposed to get from school, but like you're still supposed to like discover yourself and find your path. And when you're on your path, when you're deciding your fate, your destiny, you end up becoming the most productive version of yourself for the world. So like, like just like the example that you gave, like, if we put you into a cubicle to do accounting, it would be a waste of your talents. But then there's someone who just truly loves numbers, and like that is their life, and they would be the perfect accountant. But if you made them a photographer, it'd be a waste for them too. And then the world gets the lesser of both.
Exactly.
And so it's unfortunate that happens so often, that we just kind of forget that we do have control over where we go. But it's also hard to, it explains why it's on the elderly end of the side that people start to saying, screw it. Because at that point, it's like, I've learned that by living by other people's expectations, my life just sucks. So at the end of it, it's kind of like, whatever, like, what are you going to do? I'm old now. It's like, I'm just going to be me. So.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely a few things at play. One of the things I'd say is, and I hear this a bit, in different, from different people, but that there's no good and bad. It's all, we apply good and bad to it. Personally, I think naturally you feel like you're doing something good, and you feel like you're doing something bad. So if you've got that moral compass, which I think, I'm sure maybe some people don't, but I think most humans, kids have that moral compass and go, oh, I'm doing something, like I'm cheating someone here, or I'm, doing something that I don't feel good about doing, or, like, and when you're at school and, you had like some of the class clowns get together and say, oh, let's do this prank, or let's, do this to someone who's already struggling socially, and you're feeling inside like, oh, this doesn't sit right, so you've got that natural internal compass, of what sits with you and what doesn't sit with you. And I think we don't really investigate that a lot, and then we're told. So, we're always trying to impress other people, in terms of what I've got to make sure this teacher's happy with me. I've got to make sure this my parents are okay with what I'm doing. I remember some of the kids that I graduated school with, like they were just under so much pressure, and you just saw this anxiety in them, and their whole they went into this cocoon when it was exam time, and just like they weren't who they were the whole time in school. And I think it's very, it's them being told what is important for them, rather than them trusting their intuition, or diving deep into their heart and soul and finding what they want to do. And I think as a kid, that's what you do. You're curious, you pick things apart, you build things together, you pick up this toy, you go, nah, that's boring, I want to go over here. And I think there's schools in Northern Europe that do this well. They kind of, there's such schools called Montessori, I think from Italy, but there's schools in Europe that do this well, where they kind of let the kids, climb trees and all these different sort of things. And they're not oppressed by a fear of being sued. And I think that's a huge thing in our day and age, is that so many things are so stringent because, they could be sued, you could be sued here. And it always comes back to, okay, look, if this happens, we could be sued. So we'd rather, and so also if you look at schools and you do some research and you look at common schools, you realize that schools were set up really like based off factory line because of wartime efforts and making sure that we could produce enough. So, how much has that changed? Like, how much has that system evolved? And I think, other countries do it really well. But yeah, I think it's about asking those questions and having those conversations, and I guess 2 cents would be, I'd love to see a society, a world where we have conversations and we go, okay, you believe, this, you believe that, or you believe schools should be like that, you believe schools should be, let's set up a conversation rather than a attack, or you're on a different side of the fence to me, or, kind of dialogue. I think, it's important that we improve the way that we dialogue.
No, I totally agree. And a lot of people, what you were saying, a lot of people don't realize that the factory connection to the, having the 7, 8, or 9 periods and the bells and it being so regimented, because that you needed that in the factory. It's like the bell ring, you move to the next station and you did that. And yes, factories are still a thing in this world, but with the continued advancement in robotics, that's becoming less and less the most common career path for people. And so it's true. The need to be open to conversation and to be open for natural variation. There are plenty of people who do really well in a conventional lecture kind of school environment. They can absorb knowledge very easily in that way. And then there are the people who put them outside, let them climb the tree, let them be more hands-on, let them do more practical skills in that component. And then, but still like cross multiply them a little bit, because then, it doesn't hurt for, the natural tinker to be able to absorb knowledge from a lecture. And then the reverse, of someone who's more the book smart kid to be able to get their hands dirty. Like it creates a balanced human being to get a taste of both sides, the whole spectrum of how to acquire knowledge. But you're right. It's so unfortunate that it happens here all the time in the States, the adversarialness, like there's so much, like we have Montessori schools, like you mentioned, but like we have the charter school system, which is like for an alternative form of education. And depending on the state and the region, there is just huge political animosity towards some of the charter schools, just because it's like, it's not, it's weird or it's different, or like, the kids may not come out with the same education as everyone else, but it's like, you know more about this because you were a teacher, Stacy.
I was going to say it's also about money, because
Oh,
it's
yep.
always about
Yes.
money, because
Yep.
the charter schools, there's only so much money to go. There's only so much money in the pot per community. And so you have a regular high school, you want to have a charter high school. That means that the regular high school is going to lose money.
Yep.
And lose kids. And this, the money that comes from the state is lost because those kids go to the different school, and that often so and the brand new charter school gets brand new equipment and brand new stuff, and the regular high school doesn't have, it's still working with old everything. So that's where some of the animosity, it's again, with haves and have nots again situation, which always creates animosity anytime we have an unequal system. And the kids who try to get into the charter school and they can't because there's only so many spaces, and so you have resentful kids who are back and the choices just aren't, well, that's a whole conversation. But I mean, I love the idea of having a charter school and having this opportunity for kids who are like, we have a performing arts high school nearby, and we have science tech high schools, and we have vocational tech schools. My own son went to a vocational school, and it's great. We have these extra some other choices beyond a system that frankly has been almost exactly the same for over 100 years. I mean, my father was not only being a wedding photographer, he was also a high school math teacher, and I was an English teacher in my other life. And so he taught from like 68 till 90 something. Anyway, I was in college for school, and telling him, "Oh, Dad, I learned this really cool idea. It's called cooperative education, where it's like student-centered learning." And he says, "We did that in 1972." And it's a pendulum, right? Let's try and make it all student-centered. Okay, let's try making all teacher-centered. And I have some friends who are teachers, and I was talking to one of them recently about if this pandemic can hold any opportunities for us, it's to recognize the areas in which our systems desperately need revamping. I don't know how school was for this year in Australia, but school for this year in the United States was pretty hellish for all involved, with the online learning and trying to transition to online, where frankly, you think there's factory elements to public school anyway. It became even more so. It was because I have 30 kids on my screen, and I have to give them all work they can do on their own at home. So here's a bunch of stuff here's a bunch of fill in the blanks, and here's papers, and here just a tremendous amount of written, a lot of regurgitation, because the teacher didn't have time to analyze all this mountain of work. And I don't fault the teachers whatsoever for making the choices that they did, but it was not, there was no critical thinking, very little critical thinking, no interaction. So the point is, this is a moment to look at our educational system and say, what is the point? Like, what are we actually trying to, what are we trying to accomplish? If we were trying to, create people who were really good at factory jobs and we're good at being on time and listening to a boss and doing detailed task work, is that actually what we want for our people? Is that really the set of skills we want these days? What are the set of skills? What do we want for, and how do we get that? And how amazing it would be to have an open conversation. But I mean, there's so much momentum, right? To the systems are they've been this way for so long, and they've changed at incremental paces, and often they just swing back and forth, like my father pointed out, from one idea to another, or going in circles and never actually moving to a point where we say, why are we doing this? What do our kids actually need? There's been tons of literature on how kids learn, the best environments for kids learning. We're not doing any of it. It's literally, like, Montessori is great because it's student led. Like, a kid gets to pursue the things they're interested in. And that we value multiple intelligences too. School in this country anyway is it's verbal skills and math skills are really the main skills you need to do well. Because so many, especially verbal skills, because so much of your schooling is based on being able to reading comprehension and writing. And so if you're not good at those things, then you think you're stupid. and you don't do well in school. And if you have an artist's mind, you have your kinesthetic sense is powerful. You have a musical, talent, and you aren't very good at verbal skills or math, then you're going to be like your grandfather told that they're idiots, and they feel like idiots on a regular, those kids who don't have the right brain. So sorry, I ranted.
No,
It's all
you're
good.
passionate.
But so I would love there to be an actual reckoning where we say, what do we want to do for our kids? Like what, and how do we get that for them? And to nourish everyone involved, to make sure the teachers feel like they're getting to participate in a way that feels that they're really making the difference they want to make, because that's why teachers get involved with this work, and the kids feel like they have agency, and that's the thing, right? Decide your destiny. Kids aren't deciding their coursework. They're handed stuff to memorize, and then I know that isn't all school is, but I think too much of it is like that, where kids are not getting to make decisions. And we think, oh, well, once you're an adult, then you can decide what you want to do with your life. You should be able to have agency to some degree before the age of 18, right? Like you should have some power over what happens to you and what happens in your own brain, and what you get to be interested in, and how you get to spend your time. And that's, it's, and a lot of school does not allow for that. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah. No, I love what you said. I think, you're talking about your father and kind of like, it's been done, or it's been tried. And then, a lot of things like that, you come with this kind of, like you think you got like this new fresh thing, like, oh, we've got to do this, got to do that. And it's like, yeah, we did that. We tried that, but I think asking the question is still important, and working back, like you said, working back, like, what's the point? Where does this kid want to end up? What do we want out of them? We obviously want someone who's valuable to the marketplace, valuable to their community, valuable to themselves, going to look after their parents when they're older, all these different sort of things, is not just going to be 100% commercially, materially focused and disconnected from their human side, so how are we going to set that up? And I think you're so right. Like when we look at, there's so many people that don't fit into that system. They don't fit into that sort of, and their brain is thinking differently. And more as the world changes, it's going to happen. And where do those kids end up? Like, do they just keep feeling ostracized from society their whole life? How do they end up finding their group? Eventually they might find like, like a group where you you play Pokemon cards, or you do, different sort of things. And then you're, I'm in my zone, and so, and then that evolves. Like I remember I had a group in my primary school, and then we went into high school, and we all changed different classes and everything. And then it was like a real like rough year, because you didn't have that kind of that cohort that you knew. So I think for me, at the end of the day, I asked, like, the question is like, how is this, relating to like the heart and soul of the being, this education, or the system, or this discussion, because it goes, if I do these 5 things at school, then I get this star, or I get this sticker, or I get to go here. And then, okay, what does that set up? Like, what's the psychological impact for the rest of the life? It's like, okay, if I clock in here, or if I pay my taxes, if I do this, if I make sure I'm polite at work, then I get this. And then at some point, the human being is going, but I'm still not content. I'm still not feeling fulfilled inside. Like, what am I doing wrong? And then they start to, I think, critique themselves and go, oh, there must be a problem with me. I have to go get diagnosed. There must be something going on with me. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. What about your environment? What about what you've been given? What about looking at everything that's happened to you in your life? You're told that if you do these things, then you'll have a great life. And I totally understand that back in the day, probably a lot of that, like during wartime and different sort of things, like, making it a lot simpler, and people focusing on just the simple things and the easy things, that's important. But like if you look at that sort of scarcity mindset from, my grandfather, Great Depression, those sorts of times, he didn't carry that scarcity mindset, but I think a lot of people did carry that scarcity mindset, save your coupons, all that sort of stuff. All that stuff does some sort of psychological damage in a way. And it doesn't connect with a world where there's so much money flowing, and so many different ways of having economic exchange and doing different things, and so much different ways of being creative of how you're going to, make a business. Because if you think about that sort of save your coupons like mentality, clip your coupon, if you think about that sort of way, it doesn't allow you to exchange in the world that is around us today. Because if you go 9 to 5, or you go to try something that was done 60 years ago, you're going to be left behind. And I think that's the scary reality.
It's so true. And I love the connection that you made with the Great Depression era, because we've experienced something like that more recently, and then the collective response was kind of the opposite in a weird way. So so feel free, both of you, to disagree with me if you don't agree. But like, the Depression era created a mentality of hoarding, of hang on to everything, because you never know when you might need it. You can reuse that Ziploc bag 20 times, kind of thing. And then the interesting thing that happened that with the '08 crash in particular was the minimalist movement of living with nothing, because you didn't have the ability to get anything. And so it's kind of interesting that like the same kind of financial global kind of response, like event, but then a common reaction was the dead opposite of just like, well, I can't get anything, so I will learn to love nothing, which is really, it's kind of an interesting flip. And now with the pandemic, we're not far enough on the other side to know what we're going to do. Like, are we going to become incredibly conservative, incredibly, risk averse because of the pandemic? Or are we going to go the opposite extreme and then become a bunch of just, reckless people because we've had to force ourselves to be so contained for so long? I don't know. We're way too early to know kind of how that's going to impact our personalities, especially the younger kids.
Yeah. Well, as you spoke about the pendulum, like kind of where does that rebound and land? I think one thing that's interesting out of this time is, things that I've focused on is in Australia, it hasn't really impacted. And in where I'm, Perth, Western Australia, the thing that's helped us is actually our geography, because we are the size of London, but we've got 2 million people. So we've got such a small population, just so vastly spread out. And I remember coming from over east, there's definitely not a huge buzz about this place. There's definitely not like, people lining up, like for restaurants and then everyone going to the same spot. It's like, you'll go out one time to a coffee shop and there'll be, a couple of people there, and the other time will be busy. So it's definitely a different sort of experience, but the impacts in terms of the other things that when society's stretched, the mental illness, the abuse, there's lots of charity organizations around where I live, and Women's Refuge, and all these different sort of things that have been impacted in such a negative way because of lockdown, because of different sort of things that have really affected society in that way. And I think what you're saying is true. It's going to be interesting to see where it extends, because so much of what people have said, like, okay, if I do this, if I clock in, if I go through these steps, then I'll get my rewards in life. And then it's just been like, whoa, like we've been turned on its head, and it's like, well, that sort of idea doesn't really work. It's not really true anymore. There's kids that are 14 that are on this sort of thing, and they're making more money than me at my my cubicle job. And all these. I think there were more millionaires and billionaires made through the pandemic, and you can look at it in one way, like, oh, there's something dodgy going there, but the other way you can look at it's just opportune. Like, there's been opportunities. If you had online business, like, I know I'm a part of a business network, and some of those businesses completely suffered. Some of those businesses had to go out of business. Other business, IT, web development, like marketing as well, just soared during that time. So I think it's very interesting because, you're told from the media a lot, like lots of fear. But then kids these days, maybe they're also seeing a YouTuber who's got 3 different ways of making money that you can make more than your teacher, and so it's a very it's a very interesting world, and it's very transparent in a lot of ways. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be interesting. You know, you have people that you see on a TV screen, or you see there, and then you have information that comes out about them, and then you've got to try and work out, what do I think of this person, or where do they sit? And I'm told that this industry is, and I think it's so funny because, you know, I've been going through something recently trying to work out what direction I'm going to take, and you're told so many different things from so many different people, and they're all professionals, you know, and it's like, okay, where do I go? Like, because, you know, if I believe this sort of, you know, program, then I go this way. If I believe this sort of, you know, narrative, then I go down this path. But, like, you know, where do I end up going? And I think that's what I think options would be the but in terms of a spiritual sense, I really like what you said about kind of minimalist, because I definitely did also feel that, you know, around the 2008 thing, like, you know, like, oh, I can never get a house, I can never do this, I can never get the money to do that, like, it's so out of, but then that sort of minimalist thing, and then especially now, it's kind of like, you know, like fasting. When you fast from, you know, eating food, or you fast from your soul, you fast from things that you're so used to using, you kind of go back to your basics. It's kind of rewarding to feel like, oh, I don't need all these exterior things that I thought I needed, you know, and that's kind of a nice spiritual growth thing. But I know I went into a few different things there.
No, it's all good. But no, you're totally right. It's, you know, both of those extremes, what happened in the Great Depression and then what happened with the recession, there's value on both ends of that. There's value in preservation, which was the response from the Great Recession, save everything. And then there is also value in being, from the Great Recession, to be selective with what you have around you, because, you know, only having things of true value to you around you. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, you know, the collective response was different in both times. And you're right, you know, there is that, it is really, like, I grew up at a time where they were saying, you know, you're wasting your time playing video games, like, you'll never make a life out of that. And there are people who make millions of dollars playing video games. And it's kind of like, you were wrong, but it's just, but like, no one knew back then that something like Twitch would exist, that there would be esports and stuff like that. Like, an entire industry spawned that no one knew was a thing. You know, look at what, like, the nerdy culture was completely ostracized in the past, and now you've got, you know, the Star Wars park at Disney World or Land, wherever the heck it is. The same thing for Harry Potter and stuff like that. And it's like, you know, Marvel has exploded, DC has exploded, and it's like, no one could predict that. And it's the same, you know, same thing like what you were saying with the tech. You know, no one knew, like, who knew, like, you know, that this, you know, something like TikTok would do what it did, you know, or Facebook or Twitter. But then some of the other ones, we don't even, like, does anyone remember Friendster? That tried and it just died. And so, you know, MySpace was the king of the crop, and now they're completely gone. You know, there was a time Blockbuster was a thing. I'm not sure that it even existed by you, like the old school video rental stuff. And then those industries are gone. And so we can't predict the future. But if we follow what we feel is our destiny within us, we will ebb and flow with what's going on in the world around us, but always going towards our end goal, whatever that is. And one's destiny isn't, now I would like to get your perspective on this. In my opinion, one's destiny isn't necessarily a career. It isn't necessarily a job. It's almost like lifestyle is not the right word. It's like a way of wanting to live. So like me personally, like, I've always had this desire to help people. And how I could help people there's 1,000 ways I could. And I ended up going into mental health with the EFT. But when I was bumbling around in my life trying to figure this out, I was in customer service for a long time, which is helping people in its own way. So like, I was meandering, trying to find the best way to express my destiny. So I'm curious to get your perspective on that, Kyle.
Yeah, I think, so luckily enough, I had the right environment. So, you know, very early on, like I said, I had quite a few challenges in my life. And then, you know, I was displaced from home, and I found myself at my grandparents' house, you know, and then they weren't actually my grandparents, so I'm not related to them at all. So they're my Australian grandparents, because I'm really originally born in South Africa. So and I've got Greek descent, so that's where all the confusion comes in. No, but you know, so I had that environment, and one thing I kind of remember is my grandfather saying to my younger brother, saying, you know, like when he was trying to work out what he wants to do, and he was like, oh, like, you know, throwing through ideas out there. He's like, why don't you, you know, consider becoming a sparky, which is electrician, you know, and so like a trade in electrician. And my grandfather's thought process was like, there's so many electronics in the world, so much is related to. And I was like, wow, he's really kept moving, you know, like the pendulum. He's kept thinking about it. He's not thought, all right, in my day, we went and did this, and we went and did that, and we did this. And I think, I mean, I know you asked me a question, but I'd love to, I guess, get your perspective.
Sure.
Maybe a bit later on. But on do you think it's a better environment where it's so diversified, and like the reason industries are there one day and gone another is because someone has either been given the freedom to go and create something, or they've gone, hang on a minute, this whole society thing doesn't work for me. It doesn't actually, I'm not on the list. I don't fit into the category. Like, so now I'm going to go and create this new thing. You know, I'm going to create this new economy. I'm going to create this, you know, like it's decentralization of power, I guess, in a way, and it kind of opens up for so many different people to get involved. I would think that's a positive out of it.
It feels I'm a Generation X person, so you know, I'm over 50. So as someone who grew up in a very much get the 9-to-5 job and then buy your house and have your 2.2 children world, I think this is a huge benefit of that there's a bunch of systems that have, as you say, become transparent and or have exploded, and they need it, and so the opportunities are so much more vast. I think, and so my son is considered Generation Z. I don't know what the hell they're going to name them. I assume they'll give them a better name someday.
Zoomer.
But
yeah.
I don't like Zoomer. I'm not a fan of Zoomer. I'm not going to vote for that one. But you know, they've been taking the lesson. They're fascinating to watch. I know a bunch of them because my son's friends, and they have been learning the lessons. I talked about this with Eric before, of the previous generations. You know, they saw, you know, what the structure used to be. They saw, you know, I have my own stories of my own passage through that structure, and you know, and kind of rigid roles and rigid models for work and life. And then they saw the millennials get kind of screwed by that model, because by the time the millennials were taught by my generation, go to school, go to college, take out college loans, you'll get a good job when you're done, you'll automatically have a good job after you graduate with your bachelor's degree, which, you know how that's turned out. You know, the poor millennials in horrible debt and often no job. And so the Zoomers, now you got me saying it, damn it. The Generation Z kids are like, well, I'm not doing that crap. I'm not doing that. And so they're all like, I'm not going, if I go to school, I'm going to go to community college and I'm going to explore. I'm going to see what's out there. I'm going to play my video games. I'm going to go on websites. I'm going to design cool things. I'm going to make stupid memes. I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. And there's just this way more openness to possibilities, I think, that I think, you know, we'll be learning from them. But they're the ones who are like poised to really be the ones who make those millions, and you know, and see, so because they've been ignoring the structures for long enough or dismissing the structures, they can see the possibilities more clearly than I can, given my own upbringing and the you know, the way I was raised. And so they're being raised, you know, each generation. It's really interesting to read about the whole generational idea and how they come up with the generations. And so it's partially, you know, what age range you are, but it's also what was life like when you were becoming an adult, and that's what shapes you. So you know, boomers being raised in the boom of the 50s when America was number one, and then me being raised during the 80s when, you know, we were the first latchkey children, and you know, greed is good, and two parents work to make lots of money and have lots of things, and then the millennials being raised with a lot more economic uncertainty, but and huge skyrocketing prices in healthcare and in college, and now the Zoomers growing up in this complete madness. So it's also interesting to think of how I think they're actually, because they're growing up in madness, they're used to madness. They're used to things being kind of a mess. And they can have an easier time of seeing the opportunities rather than running, screaming, trying to hold on to the old ways. And they don't have they have no affection for the old ways, unlike my generations and previous generations, which I want to keep things the way they are. Like, get over it. It's time to talk about how to make things new and better. And the Gen Z kids are ready for that.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I was just going to say, it's like there's a certain boldness to that generation. Kind of just like okay, I'll nod as you tell me like what I need to do, and the problem with my generation, and we're all bad people or naughty kids, and okay, sure. And by the way, I'm just going to close this deal over here and make like I'm just going to get this meme out there, whatever it is. It's incredible.
No, and exactly with that, it's. Generation Z has learned to be self-reliant. And the thing that shafted the millennial generation more was the overstructuring of their life, and them thinking that structure was going to give them everything they needed. And then it ended up being a farce. And so you end up with the Enron situation, you end up with the Bernie Madoff, you end up with the economic crash and the housing bubble and all this crap of so the Z generation has seen all of that and been like, the only person I can trust is me, and let me figure out what works for me, and then be successful on my own and not rely on something else. So they're disillusioned in a good way towards the past.
Yeah, not ideal though. I mean, as far as the need for community and connection, and that's the other weirdness of today. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of kids that's happening too, because we've been living separation for a year and a half, and more Zoomers are in fact online, and their friends are online, and they communicate for text and not in person. So I know but in fact, I know to have that's going to be the missing piece for them, is learning how to going back to the idea of community, and in fact that we do need to rely on each other for support.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you something, Kyle, to bring it back to the photography real quick, because I'm curious. When you've taken a photo, especially of a younger kid, let's say a teenager, like we've been talking about for a bit, and you get them in that moment where you capture their soul, what has been their reaction when you showed it back to them? Because they live with the veil. I'm very curious if you've ever had that opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And I'm thinking back to like my cousins, and it would definitely be, with one of them like shock, shock, horror, and then like humor that follows, because because it's not someone they see, I think and because they're so used to putting up this facade, and that you've gone and captured that. It's kind of like that thing in a way also where Indigenous tribes feel like photography is not necessarily the greatest thing because you're going to capture their soul. That's literally what they believe, which is interesting. So with, I think, teenagers with the kind of shielding, once you capture it, say, hey, what did you call it something that I wasn't willing to kind of share with you straight away. I think that's definitely the reaction that I've got.
That's so interesting, because I would imagine that, because like you said, it starts with shock, but then it turns into amusement of huh.
Yeah.
I could see that being such a therapeutic thing for anyone, regardless of age, but teenagers, the veil is so common. To kind of like, this is who you are, not what you think you are. And like Stacy and I work with a lot of that with people, where people are like, I need to be this way. I need to be the perfect husband, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect father, the perfect employee, the perfect this, the perfect that. And it's like, but that's not who you are. You are this. And it's like, and yeah, you can be a great all of those other things, but you are this. And if you live true to this, the rest of it'll fall in place.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
that's so cool that you do that.
Yeah. And her and my cousin, her father's also a photographer. And I feel like she's kind of, I think about this one cousin, she's not into, I think she's a lot more real. Like she's like real in terms of how she operates, how she exists, you know, how she moves around and does the thing. Like, you know, I like this, I don't like that. Very much, you know, not kind of just getting swept up in the ocean of you know, popularism. So I've noticed that, you know, from her. And I think maybe being photographed so much in a different way, like, you know, by him as well, with like some of the campaigns he was doing, I think probably maybe you're right. Like, it invited her to kind of, you know, get rid of that veil and go, oh, geez, I don't have to have, you know, and no offense to anybody that does have, but I don't have to have all this makeup on all the time. I don't have to have all this, you know, this, I don't have to pretend to be this person, you know, I am me and this is who I am. And I think it's such a gratifying thing. And, you know, to talk about what Stacy was saying, you know, that's going to be the one thing, is the community and how we connect with each other, you know, seeing as though what has happened. And I think with that connection, that community, you know, it's easy to kind of go, all right, this, and that was going to be one of my questions. It's easy to go, okay, this system, this, you know, everything, you know, look at how, and I think corruption, something that really forces this, when we see how corrupt systems are, or how, you know, corrupt, or we've been told this person is a saint and they're not. We've been told this person's doing right by us, like the typical sort of politician, like, I've got your best interests at heart, trust me, you know, and then you find out, wait a minute, what are you doing like that aren't at my best interest? So, you know, and with that information, you know, the youth can kind of go, okay, we just need to tear it all apart, we just get rid of it. But I think we need, I think it's the balance, like you said, like we need some structure, like think of your own life, you need some structure. And then you need that creative freedom. You need that time in the morning to go journaling. You need that time to, you know, like go do something out of your comfort zone every so often. But then you also need that daily structure to come back and make sure you're, you know, fulfilling your obligations that you've set or elsewhere. And I think it's going to be the interesting thing for the younger generation, is to figure out that sort of balance and where it aligns. And one question I would have is, do you think that organically or naturally, we are going to evolve these systems and structures, like say, like, you know, what value does politics have in such a young kid's life? Like, or what value does some structures that have been totally, I guess, disemboweled by recent times have to the future generations? I don't know. It's a broad stroke question. It is very broad stroke, but you know, like that sort of natural kind of, okay, this thing doesn't work for me anymore. Like, you know, like kind of like the 9-to-5 cubicle job doesn't work for me, you know, and then maybe there's other areas where that doesn't work, you know, okay, you know, paying these taxes doesn't work for me, or doing this part of the, you know, society doesn't work for me, and kind of like becoming like a pick up and put down sort of thing for maybe the future generations, you know?
So, it's a
I don't know if
really
there's a
good.
question in
No,
there.
it's a really good question though. I want to put aside the political half for a second because that's more complicated. But
Yeah.
like, from an economic side, people express their desires for what they want through money. It's one of the ways they express their desires, through what they want through money. It's also through voting as well. So like, one thing I would certainly say with everything going on is conventional colleges should be very scared, because that you have an entire generation that is very disillusioned to that infrastructure, and they are going to run out of clients very fast. They're going to run out of customers, which is the student. And so it wouldn't surprise me if that world is going to have no choice but to adjust. Because if it goes back to the whole point of what you're trying to create, deciding your destiny. if you are creating something of true value, you will find those who will pursue it and give their time, their energy, and their money for that value. But if you're not producing something of true value, if you're not producing something of real worth, you could be the snake oil salesman for a while, but every person you screw over is someone who's going to scream, "Don't do this." And you'll have negative customers, and then eventually you're dead in the water. So, you know, that does add up. What makes it complicated on the political side is that the government has the authority to essentially kill you legally, to pursue you with the full extent of the law and beyond if they want to. But it doesn't make it immune. It just makes it a lot, just like what Stacy was saying with schools, a lot slower to change. And so eventually the people will rebel one way or another. And if politicians continue with the hypocrisy, eventually people will stop believing them and say, "Screw you, I'm going to vote for the person I think is real." And like, Trump for us is kind of an example of that, not to dive too far into politics, but he was a big middle finger to the establishment, whether you agree with him or not. He was not part of the establishment. So was that the best choice? It's to be determined, and everyone has their own opinions, but there are those that are disruptive like him, and then there's going to be those that are disruptive in other ways that may be better or worse. And so I think with time, it will start to autocorrect, hopefully, that what is stagnant will start to decay and die off. And we are seeing that. If you pay attention to certain industries, we are seeing that, like, the news has become so democratized that some of the big channels have pitiful viewership. Same thing with TV shows too. It doesn't have to be the days of Seinfeld or Friends are kind of dead, where it appeals to such a grand group of people, but then it's somewhat generic. Now you have these microcosm shows where you have these little loyal followings, but they truly like, this is an awesome show, or this is an awesome product, or this is an awesome politician. You get that too. So I am kind of the optimist, so I am hopeful that it will be a positive evolution, but it will be painful for a while for sure, because the things that don't want to die are going to fight it.
Oh yeah, of course. But sorry, just jump in. So it's like the marketplace determines the direction, but like,
it's a strong force. Yes.
Yeah, it's a strong force. Obviously, there's establishment. There's different interests. Like, so if you wanted to get rid of, if the marketplace said, "Hey, we want to get rid of oil tomorrow," or "We want to get rid of this way of making money tomorrow," or there's going to be a lot of pushback, or a lot of different things at play. But the marketplace, I think, has also become a lot more versatile. So everyone will watch news, religiously for a period of time, and then everyone will just drop off and go somewhere else. And then that whole structure is bending at the knees. And then, so I think it's become a lot more versatile in that, and agile in how things are going to change. Maybe that'd be my opinion. But sorry, I think Stacey, you were going to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Stace.
Just to make sure, I feel like I lost the thread of what the original question was. It's all right, zoned out there for a second. Just as far as how the changes are going to be, like how this next generation is going to, tell me again what, yeah.
I think if I'm summarizing it up correctly, I think it was like, is all of this personal direction and self-reliance going, like the creation of all these little microcosms of self-direction, is that going to have larger impacts of all of these structures that have been existing for so long?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with the woo-woo answer.
Go for it.
Because I do the woo-woo. I mean, I've been so aware lately of how big and complicated everything is. And we all have our little microcosm, and we all have our little perspective, and we have our little slice of how we see the world and what we want for ourselves and how we move through the world. And and you can look at that as what a tiny little slice of the world I have any responsibility or effect over. Or it can be, I get to affect my little piece of the world. And what I'm really believing is that the more individualized we are and self-reliant we are, like that's a piece of the process that's actually going to save us one day, because I think everything's going to keep changing like crazy. And like there may be people out there who are like, who think they're going to handle it, or they think they're going to keep the structures in place despite and they're just, I believe they're wrong. I believe that at some point there's going to be just drastic movements in all our systems in our natural world. We have so many pressure points and so many pieces, moving parts that can fall at any moment, that the people who are like you, who are talking about, what do you want, and keeping yourself open to yourself and to the world around you, and watching what's happening and seeing the opportunities that come up, that I think the answers are probably, we don't even know what they are yet, because we haven't finished moving through this thing we're going through right now. Like this is this first phase of the pandemic is part one, right, of many more parts to come. And we can't know what's going to happen next. All we can do is be open to whatever does happen and feel strong within ourselves to take the leap when we need to leap, and to go after the opportunity, or take advantage of that situation, or find that, or connect to that person that suddenly shakes loose. My optimism is that a lot of things are going to shake loose over these next 5 to 10 years, and then the people who are willing to jump into that maelstrom, the new stuff, are going to be the ones who make the world over the way we want it to be, in a way that functions better for everyone, as well as like for all the beings who live here, not just the humans. So that's my giant big picture commentary.
I like it. I like it. That's I'm on board. The one question I would have, I don't know if this is for, like, maybe it's because of, I'm 28 now, so how I've grown up, but I feel like, look, the world is so diverse and changing, but in a way, is it more predictable in terms of things are more transparent? Like we're in the transparent age. Like, you see people's intentions, you see people's dirty laundry, but you kind of see everything that's going. It's so diverse, where maybe 2008 it was kind of like oh, I don't know how I'm going to get this. I don't know how something like that even happens. How did that all go down? And it's very like mysterious. Like it was a very mysterious world. And I don't know if that was my age at the time, but I felt like, but now I feel like things are like open, and it's like, oh, we've got this recording, we've got this information here. This person's done this documentary over there. I feel like there's a lot more transparent information, and maybe we can predict things, or maybe we can kind of better adjust to things coming up, like a huge economic, like 2008 might not, we might be ready for it, or can reposition ourselves. I don't know, maybe that's my optimistic view of it as well.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think of the things that, so, I was in high school in the 80s, and I think of the way I perceive the world and the kind of information I had access to versus the information my own children have access to. It's incredibly changed. And I agree, like they're so much more savvy and aware and conscious. The consciousness has been raised tremendously because they have access to just the information you're talking about. And that's a huge change for the kind of adults they're going to be, and the kind of choices they're going to make. And it's an opportunity. I agree with you on that optimistic front.
And a big part too, the one thing, the only prediction I have any level of confidence to make about the future is it is going to be incredibly more difficult to be deceptive because of what you said. There's so
One
much
can hope.
Well, there is so much. We've worked with people, and I myself lived as this for a long time. We've worked with people who are not living true to themselves, and you can't keep that mask on forever. You rebel. And that is also, that still applies. So if someone is pretending to be altruistic and they're not, eventually an email or a video or a recording will come out of them cursing out a homeless person, and then all of a sudden that whole image just shatters.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, we're seeing that a lot, with surprise, our politicians, all of them, 99.9% of them are all full of shit. Surprise. But then you're seeing that with our celebrities. You're seeing that with our sports people. You're seeing that with our community leaders, our teachers, our parents, and us. None of us are immune. We all can't hide ourselves too much. Even if you stay off all of the tech, someone else has a phone.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a log cabin in the middle of nowhere, a drone will show up and find you. And so that's slightly frightening and dystopian as a joke, but like,
that's a huge benefit. I mean, I think that the thing that has hampered other generations, including my own, is the idea that there were people who knew what was going on and they knew best. It's, if you want to talk about, and it turns out that's all not true. So the idea that there are people who are special, who are, who should be in charge, and they should be the ones in charge and not me, and I shouldn't bother because I don't, it's just leveling the playing field among all, like, we're all humans doing our best or not, but either way, we're all humans doing our thing, and that there's less mystery and less accolades for a certain kind of person, that they must be the ones who should take over rather than me myself taking over. Like, that would be a thrill, like having individuals having more agency and believing themselves to have power and wanting to exert that power in the world for good, and not believing that they have to just do what they're told or they have to follow, toe the party line, all those things. I would be thrilled if more people, in fact, are able to do that.
And I would say the litmus test for when this optimism and this exposure fully penetrates into the political spectrum, whatever politics you're talking about, is when we have a politician who genuinely says, I can't promise to make your life better, but I will do what I can not to make it fucking worse. And then they win. When a politician can say the truth to their constituents, that they have very little power and that they're going to do their best not to fuck it up, and then they get voted into power because they finally told their constituents the truth of, like, I'm going to do my best not to screw this up, and get out of your way to be successful instead of making a false promise, then that would be the sign that it's penetrating into politics. But that is, if I see one politician before I die that does that, I would be amazed. Well, anywhere in the world, I'll take it anywhere.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's that I think it's the double-edged sword. Like, one part, I think what's interesting you're seeing, and obviously American politics is obviously the stage front for a lot of it, but you're seeing that it's like some of these politicians are having to be a bit more transparent. And even in Australia, there's been some things coming out of, the main party in the parliament, and some like terrible like emails that came out and information that came out of someone who, something bad ended up happening to them, and all this sort of abuse and everything like that. And so you're realizing that these people in power that are there saying we've got your best interest in heart, not only are they maybe looking after someone else's economic advantage, but there's all this abuse, and there's this emails of sexual abuse and all these different sort of things. And you're going, holy crap, like, these are the people that when they say jump, I jump. When they say, and I believe in them, and this is what's happening. So I think, and you'll see, like, they'll, like, the normal offense is to go on the attack and get in front of a camera screen and quickly explain everything through and have a long program where you're going to kind of softball questions. And you can kind of see that has happened in the Australian sort of landscape recently with some things that have come out of the woodworks. And I think naturally politicians are going to have to evolve in a certain way to be more transparent. And you're seeing these people on Instagram, on this, showing their lives behind the scenes, those sorts of parts of them are going to have to change. My one thing, which is, I think what you're saying is that because the world, it's the transparency, age in a lot of ways. And obviously there's a lot of information that won't probably reach us or reach a lot of us, but it is more transparent than it ever was. So, and with the amount of information. And I like the idea, that I think you're talking about, Stacy, in terms of that has a way of like correcting people and making them a little bit more like moral and a little bit more, have to be careful with what they say, what they do. But then the double-edged sword is, where does that forgiveness come in terms of, all right, if you're a 50-year politician or you've been in this company for 50 years and you're saying these things to the public, but then you're doing some other dodgy things that we've seen, we've found out about, then there's obviously has to be a lot of reprimand for that. But if you're a teenager who maybe says something wrong at the, or maybe like is in a group, because, you're in a group dynamic and you think, oh, I've got to be one of the guys, let me make a joke, and then that joke is, say, racist, sexist, or just bigotry, or who knows, ageist, or whatever it is, like, and you're caught on camera at that time. What is the mental impacts and implications of that? Like, that's where I'd say the double-edged sword is. Like, I feel for people at that age, because I know I did a lot of stupid things as a teenager. I would have hated them to be caught on camera, Yeah.
But no, yeah.
Well, I mean, forgiveness, right? Like that's
forgiveness and grace.
I mean, forgiveness, grace, and seeing each other as humans, and making allowances for each other, and having compassion and empathy. Like,
that would be certainly nice.
I mean, that's where that's what's missing on the world, at the certain levels of government, of celebrity, of everything. That's what we're missing. That those human pieces have been cast in media. It's been cast aside, really.
Yeah.
So this has been a massively fascinating conversation, but we do have to bring it to an end eventually, or this podcast will never end. And no apologize. I've been loving it. Any last words of wisdom before we let you go?
Yeah, especially if you have something you want to say about your upcoming book, because
for sure.
I've been meaning to ask you about that for about half an hour, but we've been having such an interesting conversation. It hasn't really come around. I haven't been able to quite work it into the conversation.
No, I appreciate that. It's been so organic, and yeah, I didn't know we were going to visit these areas, but I think we're obviously, and this is the beautiful thing about communication, is that everyone has interesting perspectives and they're trying to work things out. Like, that's what we're all trying to do on this place, is trying to figure this thing out, and we're given a bit of information, and that information might be slanted or might have a bit of its own color into it, and then we have to kind of go and decipher that and go, okay, what does it actually mean in my life? Like you said, what is this actually going to mean to me? And so the book that I'm writing and the journey that I'm on, doing daily videos, Decide Your Destiny Daily Doses, has a lot of relation to obviously what I was told by my grandfather, and a lot of my health challenges when I was younger, about 18, I had a lot of near-death experiences, and having to manage my health for the rest of my life and being very conscious of that, so I guess that's why the daily dose kind of came out, like give a daily dosage of positivity, of reflection, of, changing my perspective, because that's all going to actually affect my internal state and my health, so that's where that comes from. And yeah, the book goes into, the 7 sections: youth, heroes, family, purpose, heart and soul, mindset, and then God and wisdom. And so it covers those 7 kind of areas. And I think they're all important areas to consider. And I guess one of the things was like, you come into life, you don't have a manual, you don't have an instruction sort of guide. And I'm not trying to say this is an instruction guide, manual for everyone's life, but it's just going off some of my experiences and what I've learned in each category. And if you get each one of those categories a little bit better, if you spend a little bit of time understanding, okay, what does God mean to me? What does wisdom mean to me? Okay, let me investigate that a little bit more. I know what this person's telling me what it means, but let me investigate a little bit more for myself. Okay, what does family mean to me? And for me, I didn't really understand the structure of family, and then I found that through the relationships I had, and in terms of definitely ethnic relationships and how important family was to them. So, learning bits and pieces. And I think it's just about puzzling those pieces together. And at the end of the day, trying to come to, like that sort of community, come to that sort of that wholesome person, that you want to be, and not feeling inadequate or not feeling like you don't have a place. Because a lot of prosperity and destruction can be done in our own mind and how we feel about ourselves. So that's really what the intention of the book is to kind of do some deep reflection and see what we can get out of it.
Beautiful. I love that.
Fabulous.
So we'll put into the show notes a link for your YouTube page, a link to your website, which has the ability to pre-order the book. So if our viewers and listeners want to grab that, they can do so. And thank you so much, Kyle. This was an awesome, meandering, wonderful conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for traveling those little routes with me and yeah, putting me on different paths as well. I think we went through quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
And thank you, listeners and viewers, for sticking with us through the journey.